I was wrapping the last of the Christmas ornaments in tissue paper when my son called. I remember that moment so clearly, the way the afternoon light came through the kitchen window and landed on the table. The smell of the cinnamon candle I'd just lit, the little felt reindeer my son had made in second grade, that I'd been holding in my hand when the phone rang. I set it down carefully before I answered. "Mom." His voice had that particular tone, the one I'd learned to recognize over the past few years. Careful, measured, like he was reading from something he'd rehearsed. "Hi, sweetheart. I was just pulling out the decorations. Are you still planning to come over Saturday to help me with the tree? I bought those white lights you always liked. The ones that's actually why I'm calling." I waited. "Christine and I have been talking, and we've decided to do Christmas differently this year." I sat down at the kitchen table. "Differently? How?" He exhaled. "We're hosting at our place, and we're keeping it small." I turned the felt reindeer over in my free hand. The little yarn tail my son had glued on was still holding after 31 years. "I see. It's not personal, Mom. Christine has been working really hard this year, and she wants everything to be perfect. She's hired a caterer. They're doing a whole thing, a 7-course dinner, wine pairings, the whole event." "That sounds lovely," I said, because I didn't know what else to say yet. The thing is, another pause. Longer this time. "The dynamic," she said, "and I want you to know, I tried to talk her out of this. She said that your cooking would make things complicated, that if you brought food, people would feel obligated to eat it, and it would clash with what the caterer is doing, and she's worried you'd want to." He stopped. "She's worried I'd want to what, Daniel?" "She said you'd want to take over. That you'd start talking about your recipes and telling her caterer how you do things, and it would be embarrassing." I sat very still. "She also said," his voice dropped lower, "she also said that the people coming are her colleagues and partners at the firm, and she needs everything to feel a certain way. Elevated, sophisticated. And she doesn't think." He couldn't finish the sentence. I finished it for him. "She doesn't think I fit that picture." Silence. "It's just one Christmas, Mom." I looked at the cinnamon candle burning on my counter, the stack of tissue paper, the box of ornaments I'd been collecting for 34 years. One for every year since the Christmas Daniel was born. There was one in that box from every stage of his life. The handprint ornament from preschool, the little ceramic basketball from his middle school years, the class of 2005 ball I'd had custom made. "All right," I said. "You're not upset?" "I didn't say that." "Mom, I heard you, Daniel. I understand. You have a nice Christmas." I set the phone down on the table, not hanging up but not speaking either, and sat there for a long time after the call ended, just looking at the ornaments. "I want you to understand something about me. I spent 38 years as a registered nurse. I've held the hands of strangers in their worst moments. I've sat with people at 3A in hospital corridors and talked them through grief they thought would swallow them whole. I've learned, in the way you can only learn by living, that the people who love you are not always the people who share your blood, and the people who share your blood will not always love you the way you need to be loved. I'm 64 years old. I have a good life. A small house with a yard, a garden I'm proud of, neighbors I've known for 20 years, a job I retired from with dignity. I make a standing rib roast at Christmas that has made grown men cry. Not from sadness, from the first bite. What Christine said, that my cooking would make things complicated, that I would clash with her caterer, that I wasn't elevated enough for her firm's partners, that was not a logistical concern. That was a verdict. On me. On my kitchen, my table, my hands, my whole way of moving through the world. I sat at that table for a long time. Then I blew out the cinnamon candle, put the ornament box to the side, and picked up my phone. But not to call Daniel back. I called my neighbor Ruth. Ruth is 72, sharp as a tack, and has been coming to my Christmas dinner for 11 years since her husband passed. She was the first person I called. Well, she said, when I finished explaining, are we going to let that stop us? No, I said. We're going to host Christmas anyway. Good. I'll bring the sweet potato casserole. Then I called my friend Beverly from church. Beverly is 68, retired school teacher, makes the best cornbread this side of the Mississippi. Her daughter lives in Portland and only comes home for alternating years. This was not one of them. I'll be there, Beverly said, before I'd even finished asking. What can I bring? Then I thought about the young couple who'd moved in 3 houses down in October. Miguel and his wife Priya, both in their late 20s, both from out of state, both without family nearby. I'd waved to them a few times. Brought them a pie when they moved in. I knocked on their door the next morning. Priya answered, still in her bathrobe, coffee in hand. Oh, hi. Mrs. Just call me by my name. I'm hosting Christmas dinner. Would you two like to come? She blinked at me. Then her face did something I recognized, the particular softening that happens when someone has been quietly dreading something and is suddenly offered a way out of it. We were just going to order Thai food and watch movies, she said quietly. Come to mine instead. Are you sure? We barely know you. I've been feeding strangers for 40 years, I said. That's basically my whole personality. She laughed, surprised, and said yes. Then I remembered a woman from my yoga class, Denise, 58, divorced 2 years ago, her kids spending Christmas with their father this year. I texted her. She replied in 4 seconds. I've been dreading December 25th since September. Yes. And then I thought about the family. There is a family, I'll call them the Okafor family because that's their name, who moved to our neighborhood from Nigeria 8 years ago. The father, Emmanuel, is a quiet man who works at the hospital where I used to work, in facilities management. His wife, Grace, makes the most extraordinary jollof rice I've ever tasted. They have 3 children, 2 teenagers, and a 10-year-old named Blessing, who once spent an entire afternoon helping me plant tulip bulbs without being asked. I'd been meaning to have them for dinner for years. I'd just never done it. I went to their house, knocked, and told Grace what I was doing. Her face broke open into a smile so wide it almost hurt to look at. We will bring food, she said. You cannot stop us. I wouldn't dare try. So that was 7 adults, 3 children. And by the time the word spread, because it always spreads, it was 11 adults and 5 children, and then 14 adults and 5 children, and I stopped counting at some point and just started cooking. Let me tell you about the cooking. I started on December 22nd. The standing rib roast, naturally. 3 ribs, dry brined 2 days ahead with kosher salt, black pepper, fresh thyme, and rosemary from my own garden. I make it the way my mother taught me, which is the way her mother taught her, which goes back further than any of us can trace. A tradition that has survived every hard year our family ever had. My green bean casserole, not the one from the can. I want to be very clear. I make a proper bechamel with Gruyere, roast the beans myself, and use a shallot and breadcrumb topping that I caramelize in butter until it's amber-colored and smells like something worth writing home about. I made 2 pies from scratch. Apple, with a lattice crust and just enough cinnamon, and a butterscotch pie, because that was Daniel's favorite when he was 7, and even if he wasn't going to be here, it felt important to make it anyway. Sometimes you cook for the memory of a person as much as for the person. Grace brought the jollof rice and a whole roasted chicken seasoned with suya spice that made everyone stop talking when she brought it to the table. Beverly's cornbread came out in a cast-iron skillet, golden brown and steaming. Ruth made her sweet potato casserole with the brown sugar pecan topping that she guards the recipe for like classified documents. Priya, it turned out, was an extraordinary baker. She showed up with a cardamom cake that she said was her grandmother's recipe from Jaipur and was entirely too beautiful to eat, and we ate it anyway. Denise brought wine. 6 bottles of very good wine. "I've been saving these for a special occasion," she said, setting them on the counter, and then I realized I was the one who gets to decide what's special. I'd borrowed folding tables from the church hall. I pulled out every tablecloth I owned and layered them. I used the good china, not the catering china, not the paper plates, the good china, the set I'd been saving for important guests. And I thought, what exactly was I saving this for? What occasion was I waiting for? This was the occasion. These were the guests. I put candles down the center of the table. The children helped me fold napkins into shapes they ended up looking more like origami disasters than swans. But the kids were deeply proud of them, and we kept them exactly as they were. Blessing Okafor arranged a centerpiece out of pine branches and red berries she'd found in my yard, completely unbidden, and it was the most beautiful thing on the table. By 5 o'clock on Christmas Day, my house was full. I mean that in every sense of the word. Full of people and noise and children running between the kitchen and the living room and the smell of food coming from every direction, and someone's holiday music playing from a phone in the kitchen, and Emmanuel sitting in my good times armchair, telling a story that made everyone on the couch lean in to listen. Full. I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the dining room for a moment before we sat down, and I looked at all of it, at my mismatched tablecloths, and my good china, and the origami disaster napkins, and Blessing's pine branch centerpiece. And I felt something unlock in my chest. It didn't feel like settling. It didn't feel like a consolation prize for the Christmas I'd been turned away from. It felt like the real thing. We sat down to eat at 6. Grace said a blessing in Yoruba first, then in English, and the second version was so beautiful that Ruth had to find her napkin. The food was extraordinary, not because it was sophisticated, because it was made with intention by people who knew what the word enough actually means. I was refilling the water pitcher when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Daniel. I looked at it for a moment, set the pitcher down, picked up the phone. He'd been texting for the past hour, it turned out. I'd had the ringer off. I scrolled up. 6:02 p.m. Mom, Christine's caterer canceled. Some kind of emergency. He had to leave. We have all these people here. 6:14 p.m. Mom, are you there? 6:31 p.m. We have 16 people, and basically no food. Christine is really upset. Is there any chance you could? 6:48 p.m. Mom, please call me back. I put the phone back on the counter. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. I'm not going to pretend I felt nothing. There was something that moved through me, call it satisfaction, call it the quiet confirmation that the universe sometimes does keep its own accounts. But it was brief. Smaller than I expected. Because I was standing in a house full of people I loved, with food on the table, and a child I'd known for 3 months had made me a centerpiece out of pine branches, and my friend was laughing so hard at something Emmanuel said that she'd knocked her fork off the table, and my butterscotch pie was cooling on the counter, and none of that had anything to do with Christine's caterer or what happened at their dinner. I walked back to the table and sat down. "Everything okay?" Ruth asked. "Everything's fine," I said. And it was. I didn't call Daniel back that night. I finished dinner, cleared the plates, cut the pies, poured more of Denise's wine, and sat at my table until almost midnight, talking to people I was glad to know. He called again the next morning, December 26th, at 8 a.m. I was in the kitchen, washing the good china. I let it ring twice. Then I answered, "Mom." He sounded tired. The careful, rehearsed voice was gone. "I owe you an apology." I kept washing a plate. "Yes, you do. What Christine said, what I said, it was wrong. You didn't deserve that." "No, I didn't. Christine feels terrible." "I'm sure she does. That's between her and her own conscience." I set the plate in the drying rack. "I hope you had enough food." We ordered pizza, he said, for 16 people. At a table set with crystal and linen, Christine's partners ate pizza off the catering plates. A pause. It was not the sophisticated evening she had planned. I didn't say anything to that. How was your Christmas? Wonderful, I said honestly. We had 14 adults and 5 children. Grace made jollof rice. Priya made a cardamom cake. Ruth's sweet potato casserole was remarkable, as always. Blessing Okafor made my centerpiece. Blessing? She's 10. She lives 3 houses down. She is, I think, the most capable person I know. He was quiet for a moment. I'm really sorry, Mom. I know you are, I said. And I love you. You're my son. And that doesn't change. Can we come over? Maybe this week? Just us. Without Daniel. I said his name gently. I'm not angry. But I need you to understand something. I am not a woman who needs to prove anything anymore. I cooked Christmas dinner for 14 people, and every one of them was glad to be at my table, and the food was extraordinary, and I used the good china, because those people were worth it. I'm always going to be worth it. My kitchen, my food, my way of living, it's always going to be worth it, whether someone in a catered event tells me so or not. He didn't respond right away. I could hear him breathing. I'd love to have you for dinner sometime in January, I said. If you'd like to come. I'd like that. Good. Bring Christine. But tell her I'm cooking. He laughed, a surprised, uncertain laugh. Okay, goodbye, sweetheart. I hung up and finished washing the china. Here is what I want to tell you. If you're the kind of person who has been told that your love wasn't the right kind, that your home was too simple, or your table wasn't impressive enough, that you somehow didn't fit the picture someone else was trying to create. Blessing brought me a pine branch and some red berries from my own yard and made something beautiful out of what was already there. That is, I have come to believe, almost a definition of grace. I've spent a long time worrying about whether I was enough, whether the food I made was right, whether the way I loved was right, whether the table I set measured up to some standard. I was never given a say in choosing. I think a lot of women my age know that feeling. You spend decades pouring into a family, into a home, into a life, and then one day you're told directly or indirectly, loudly or in the careful measured voice of a phone call on a December afternoon, that the love you gave wasn't quite the right style. I want to say this plainly. That is a lie. Not a small error in judgment. A lie. The love you gave was real. The food you made was real. The table you set, the candles you lit, the traditions you kept alive year after year while everyone else was busy, all of it was real, and none of it needed a caterer to validate it. I will not be waiting for permission to use my good china again. I will not be saving the butterscotch pie for the right occasion. I will not be adjusting myself to fit into a picture I was never asked to be part of. Christmas this year was 14 adults, 5 children, 1 cardamom cake, 1 standing rib roast, 1 legendary jollof rice, 6 bottles of good wine, origami disaster napkins, a pine branch centerpiece made by a 10-year-old, and the sound of people laughing in a house that was genuinely, completely, beautifully full. It was the best Christmas I've had in years. And if that's not sophisticated enough for some people, I suppose they are welcome to order pizza.